Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Not many guests have come on the podcast to talk about anything from the year 2000. It's kind of a lost year when most fans consider the tail end of 1.0. 1999 gets a lot of love. Big Cypress is the unquestioned greatest of all time, but what about those 52 shows that capped the 1.0 era? Today's guest, Brad Rosen, joins us today all the way from Israel to help plug in that gap. Brad went to a bunch of shows on the 2000 fall tour, and if he had his way, I have a feeling that he would want to have an episode about every single one of them. But we were able to whittle today's guest spot down to highlights from the Albany 2000 run, September 8th and 9th, 2000 at the Knickerbocker Arena, then known as the Pepsi Center. Phish was just about a month away from their first hiatus, but this two-night stand presents a band that has it all, with maybe the edges beginning to fray as they drift from one jam to another with very few boundaries in sight. Throughout the show, you can hear the crowd responding to the band with ceaseless energy, clap-alongs, although we'll also hear how Brad explains that if there were very few boundaries in the music, things were definitely fraying at the edges of the lot scene. But more on that in a minute. Give Farmhouse another spin, make some room for Michael Ray, and don't forget to stop at Hershey as Brad and I discuss September 8th and 9th, 2000 in Albany, New York. Brad, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's great to be on.
My pleasure. It's great to have you. And you picked a couple of shows for discussion today that I'm really excited to discuss, not only about the shows specifically, but because of the year that you chose, which, and we'll get into this later, but is kind of underrepresented on Attendance Bias. And I think one could argue in Phish conversation as a whole, but that's for later. For now, we went back and forth for a while and we couldn't quite decide on one show or even one jam. So we decided by narrowing it down to talk about Phish's two-night run at what was, I don't know if it still is, but what was Pepsi Arena at the time. I call it the Nick in Albany, New York. Same building since then until now. And that is the fall tour of 2000. So that's September 8th and 9th, 2000.
Right. Yeah. I think now, I don't know, they named it something else. I don't know. They're like, these arenas are always doing these things, so just to confuse us Phish heads, No, but I think it first was called the Nick from the Dead, and I was just checking out some of the history, and I think the Dead played there 13 times, and Phish played there. It seems like 13 times. Well, I was looking at just the history because I was just curious, and I think the Dead didn't really start playing there until the 90s. There is Dozing at the Nick, and that I'm not a crazy 90s Dead era ahead. I love the Dead 100%, but so I just wanted to do some comparison, research a little bit on on that specific arena, because I was also looking at the capacity. I don't know, I was thinking different things. It seemed to be someone said 4,800.
No, that's low.
It seems low. It seems extremely low. It seems super low. And then I saw something else 7,000, 7,500, which seems a little more correct, I guess. There.
I'll check. When I do the fact check, I'll take a look because I've always placed the Nick in the same category as, say, the Nassau Coliseum or the North Charleston Coliseum or the Hampton Coliseum, where it's these kind of in-between old hockey barns that have very little going on except for maybe the occasional American Idol Live or Disney on Ice when it's passing through town. They don't really have a professional sports team to keep them alive, but they serve a local community.
And for that occasional Phish show coming through, Phish sounded incredible. The vibe was electric. They were stoked to be there. There's no doubt about it. But they were both phenomenal shows. I really thought they were both great shows. I mean, I have a little attendance bias, yes, maybe pun intended, because I saw 10 shows in 2000, and every show was a killer show. But these two first shows were really phenomenal. I thought for starting the tour off.
Well, we'll get really deep into the thick of it. We'll get pretty
Awesome.
specific about it. Before we get
Cool.
to that, though, Brad, let's get to know
Sure.
you with the
Okay.
attendance bias lightning round.
Attendance bias lightning round.
So, Brad,
Great.
when
Cool.
was your first fish show and what do you remember about it?
Okay. So, Brian, my first fish show was 10/21/1996 at Madison Square Garden. I don't remember a huge amount about the actual show. I do remember I was 15 years old. I was a freshman in high school. I was just getting into fish. I think I had a few tapes. I want to say I maybe had like one tape or two tapes at that time. But I really like it was like I was total noob, totally going into the show. Never saw fish, never like didn't know anything about them at that point, really. Never really heard that much about them per se, even. Like I was just going because like a couple of friends of mine, they were like, come on, let's go see fish. I was like, who, what, where? I mean, like I kind of knew them because I just started to like get into it because I knew I was going to the show. So like there was a guy and this guy Adam Schwartzberg, who's a really cool guy who's like I credit him for getting me into fish. And so he was like a few years older than me. He was in this music class with me in South Brunswick High School in New Jersey. I was like into Dave, and like he knew that I was wearing like Dave Matthews shirts, and I was like getting into that kind of scene, getting into the vibe a little bit. My sister's a few years older than me, and she was already in college at that point. She's like 4 years older than me, so she was getting into Dave Matthews. Her boyfriend was like a huge Dave Matthews head, so she gave me all these tapes, and I was like super into like Dave. I saw Dave like a bunch of times at that time, even before Fish. And I just was like, okay, let's go. Why not? Let's check it out. Let's not knowing that they would like become my absolute favorite band forevermore. It kind of put Dave Matthews to shame a little bit as far as like just how cool, like how cool the scene was, the vibe. There was this like hippie girl with a dread sitting next to me and my friend. I went like with two of my friend Amy and my friend Todd, newbies also. We were all freshmen in high school. No one ever saw fish. My friend Amy's like, "I'll see you guys. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go look for mushrooms or something." She read. We are like, "Okay, that's interesting. Well, I guess we should go to our seats. We should sit down. I guess this was like right before about the lights go down." I had been to MSG a lot of times because I had Knicks season tickets growing up. So
That
I
was a
saw a
good
lot.
time, by the way. Sorry to interrupt, but the mid 90s, that was a good time to have Knicks
Great
season
time.
tickets.
Great time. Amazing time. I mean, I saw so many great games there with Pat Ewing and those teams. That was a great time. And the Bulls and anyway,
And
so
Reggie Miller, curse him.
Reggie Miller,
Anyway,
right,
anyway,
right,
anyway.
right. We won't get into Reggie Miller. I was just about to say Reggie Miller. But so I was comfortable with going. My mom, she dropped us off at the train station in New Brunswick by Rutgers, 45 minutes, to MSG. At first I just got out and I was like starting to see the heads and I was like, whoa, what is going on? This is cool. Like what something is cool. I don't know what it is, but everything was awesome. Like it was new, it was fresh. I remember just sitting down like with my friend, and besides like people like passing us joints and stuff. And but at that point I was so young and like just didn't know what was going on at all. So this
It's
girl,
it's it's funny because you and I have kind of not
similar
quite
story.
identical, but really
Uh-huh,
similar like first show experiences. Mine came a year
uh-huh,
later, but I remember when these shows that you're discussing, the
hmm.
October 21st, and they played the next night, the 22nd at MSG
Right,
in 96.
right,
I
right.
wanted to go. I've told this story a couple times on the podcast, but I wasn't
Uh-huh.
allowed because it was a Tuesday and a Wednesday. It was
Right,
during the
right,
school year, and I lived
right.
on Long Island. You're in New Jersey,
Uh-huh.
so we're coming from
Right,
opposite ends into
right.
New York City. I wasn't allowed to go, but the way you're speaking about the way you felt and what you saw going on around you, I had the exact same
Uh-huh.
feelings in that, like, I knew there's
Uh-huh.
something cool about this. This is great. It's different from what I'm used to, but I
Right,
don't know what I don't know.
right,
Like,
right,
there's so
exactly.
much to be discovered.
Right, so much. What was your first show again?
December 29th, 1997.
Ah, okay. Wow. Oh, talking
So,
about shows. So they're already playing a few years, whatever. So, so before the lights go down, there's this girl sitting next to me in dreads, and she's starting and as the show's going on, she's starting to write like I'm seeing her like drawing this journal, and I'm like just looking over, I'm like, can I just like ask like what you're doing? Like it just like something blew my mind about it that she was so like intent on the show. She's like, oh yeah, she's like for sure. She's like, I'm writing the set list down, like, and I just remember that sticks out in my mind. At that point, that was like the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. Like it just blew my mind because I didn't really know about the Dead yet that much. And then at this, at this juncture, that was like maybe my third concert like I ever went to, and it was just awesome. I mean, it was awesome. I couldn't remember. I couldn't like even tell you. I think they played sample. I think I think was that the Star Spangled Banner. I think, and like they opened with. I think, but it was a great show. I mean, there was something about it that brought me back and brought me back pretty quickly.
But
Yeah.
let me ask you, fast forwarding a little bit.
Yeah.
If those were your first shows, what was your most recent show? And what did you think of it in comparison?
I left America in 2009 and I moved to Israel in 2009. And I saw a show in Camden in 2009. I think it was like six something 2009. I don't really remember the exact date. 6-7, right. So the last show that I actually saw in person, and so I came back to see my parents, like with my kids, and we went to Florida for a couple of days and whatever. So one of the things was like contingent upon me, like, coming back was like I told my mom, I was like, I have to see Fish. Like I have to, like, it's been 9 years, like, and she could even understand my
they don't exactly tour Tel Aviv that often.
right. Exactly. They've never been to Israel. That was like the number one thing I missed was besides maybe my, like my parents and family was Fish, and just going to Fish shows. Like I saw Fish maybe before I left, before 2009, I want to say 30 some odd shows. And this is with two hiatuses too, so I really like was going hardcore after 97, really 97, 98. Well, we can get into it. But like, but whatever. So this was the last show I saw in person was 8/7/2018. I think they played 2 nights in Camden. I wanted to go to both or something, or maybe it was even 3 nights. I think it was 2 nights, maybe 2 or 3 nights. I don't remember. It's not my favorite venue out of all the places, but okay, it was like an opportunity to go see Fish again. I have not seen them since 9 years in that exact venue. There was some really murky guard that was like watching me the whole time, and I just didn't. I just was not having a great time.
At the end of things, it is still Camden, yes.
Right, Camden is Camden, but it was a fun experience. It was a fun experience. We were on the floor, and my mom, she got us these like I don't know, she spent like $80 for the tickets, and we were like, it was a really hot night, so that kind of detracted a little bit from it because it was like super super hot and it was really packed on the floor, so it was a little bit hot, but the vibe of the show was pretty cool altogether, and it was cool like seeing friends. And 2018, I thought they were sounding good. But what was cool was like we were like 4 or 5 rows away from Mike, so we're on Mike's side, and it was loud, it was good. I told my wife, I was like, look back there, you see all those people, like we're not them, we're like really close. That's like that's cool, that's cool. I wanted to get to the front, so during half, like it was like set break, and so I was like, come on. Like we're like so close. We're like literally so close, but it was so packed, and people were like there, like they were in their thing. I got like really like literally right in the center of the front. And then some guy got like really angry at me that like I took his spot. And I was like, oh man, what happened to the old school, Fish vibe where like people would like, yeah, go in front of me. Come on. This is her first show. Come on. Like I was like, let's go back to that other like part where the more chiller people were like, so so we walked back a few rows back, and we were in this basically the same spot, but it was a killer show. And I mean, most of it, I would say like everyone around us was really, really cool. It was a cool vibe. It was a nice vibe. And like I was telling my people, like you could see I like talking about Fish. So I was like, this is my first show in like 9 years. They're like, what? I was like, came all the way from Israel. Like, they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. So it was cool. It was cool just talking to people and just being back in the scene a little bit and seeing a pretty mediocre show. I mean, it wasn't one of the best shows I've ever seen. It wasn't one of the best shows that they ever played. They seemed a little bit tired. It was a little bit It was very hot. It was, I think, towards the end of the tour, but it was still Fish, and there was some really great highlights of the show.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, in your words, you went pretty hard, you said, in 1.0. So even with
yeah,
that, either mediocre to possibly negative experience of that Camden show, what's
yeah.
the best either 3.0 or 4.0 Fish
Ooh,
show that you've seen?
ooh. This is a good question. I still was like kind of going over this question a lot in my head. Um, 3.0 to 4.0 would be exactly which years from.
From 2009 until now.
Wow. Okay. So, from 2009. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the only show I've seen in person was that 2018 show. But like I've seen a lot of webcasts, and in this past year, like I watched because it's kind of far for me to go, to shows. But I saw this pat between the Sphere of last year and now the Mexico shows I just watched. I saw I think 17 shows. To me, it's the closest like experience I can like from actually to being in the show. So I'm gonna just speak as if like I was kind of there, but
Right.
not, But I mean, I think they were on fire. Like all these shows, I think the Sphere shows were phenomenal. But again, like the only one that I was actually at, like from 2009 to 2018, was in 2009 and 2018.
So those were the only couple shows you saw in the past couple decades.
Right.
Look, going back to 2000 to 2009, right? That break that you took,
Yeah.
there's during that time, especially in the earlier part of the breakup, there were a lot of solo bands from the members of Fish. What's your
Right.
favorite Fish related solo band member, if I got that right? The best show you've seen from a Fish band member solo?
I saw Trey band a lot, and he's amazing band, incredible band, and they've gotten better and better over the years. There was a certain really good vibe, like I think in around 2000, 2001, 2002, and like when they were on the hiatus too, at some point too, like I think it was like around that time too, and I was just trying to like I got into Trey's band because he was like still playing, and but I remember the show. It's 10/26/02. I was going to school in Pennsylvania, very close by, not too far from Lehigh, in Kutztown, which is it's in Pennsylvania. So it's not that far, from Lehigh. And it was a smaller kind of, show. I can't imagine there was more than 5,000 6,000 people there. It was like in a big gym, like the stage and everything. And I went with a friend who was like a bass player. I was in bands and like in college and high school, and there was a guy that I was friends with who was in a different band. So I was friends with different musicians, and this guy was like a really good bass player. So he's like, "Hey, let's go to the show together. Why not? It's like 15 minutes away." And I think I saw Trey's band already like a few times. The sound was superb inside that gym. It was like a small kind of gym, and the sound was really good. I don't know, it sounded great, and I remember it was a really good vibe. The show was I think I have the set list here. Yeah, the first set was great. I mean, Night Speaks to a Woman was great. And second set they played Came in Review, which I love that song. Sand was great. Drifting, I also love Drifting. It's a great song. And then Trey did this like solo acoustic thing with the In-Law Jersey Wells, which was cool. Like I don't know when the last time he did that was with Trey Band. I mean, I'm not like so on top of like their set list and everything, but altogether it was a tight show. It was a really tight show. They sounded great. The band sounded great at that time. Trey had a lot of energy going on, but the thing that was really got to me and still sticks to with me till this day is I have to be like close. There's a lot of times I try to get you get that vibe from me, right? Like I try to get so I got to the first row, and with my friend, we're standing like right there, like maybe I want to say maybe second, but right there, like in the center. And there's one point I'm pretty sure it was during the first set, but Trey looks down and he's jamming and he's like, I want to say it's in Night Speaks to a Woman, but it might have been in Alive Again. I don't know. It was like a really killer jam, and I was dancing my butt off. Like I just love dancing at shows, and my body just like flows. It just like my whole soul, my whole everything is into like what's going on into Fish or Trey's band, and it just moves me. Like there's something that moves me about Trey, about his level of musicianship, and how he just gets zoned into a jam, or what that his whole everything about Trey, his whole vibe. I've always loved, and I'm just smiling my face off, and I'm just like looking, and I'm just like I'm dancing like so hard, and my friend's not like such a big dancer, I guess, like. But he's watching me. We're both having a great time. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's just laughing, like having a great time. Like, and Trey looks down, and he's also like smiling, and he has the Trey grin, the classic Trey, like, I'm loving my life. I'm loving everything about everything right now, in that zone. Like because they sounded really good. And again, they were really like locked in with each other. And he looked down at me for like, maybe like a second, 2 seconds, but like that's like my thing to this day. And my friend was like, dude, did you just see that? Did you see that? And he's like jumping up and down. And I'm like trying to like be calm and collected. And he's like, did you see that? Trey looked at you. I was like, he smiled at you. Look, I was like, yeah, I caught that. I might have caught that. And I just couldn't. I was like telling everybody like about that afterwards. And I was just so happy. It's made my life, like in a lot of ways, like that connection, just that brief moment, that 1 second, just to, like, I connected with him on that 1 second of life. But to me, it was so meaningful because Trey is like my inspiration as a guitarist, as a lyricist, as a musician, as a person in a lot of ways.
Well, that's all it takes is 1 second sometimes. But let me ask you the question I
Yeah.
ask everybody for every lightning round. What is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Fish show?
This one I thought a lot about, and I couldn't come up with one specific thing. I kind of go back to that first show with the girl, the hippie girl that's writing the set list, but I saw so many things like at Fish shows that probably I might have been like, okay, that's interesting, that's weird. I don't know. In the last show I went to, I saw a friend of mine who I actually got into Fish. His name is Matt Wolfson, and now he's like on his 254 something, 200 and something show. I just feel good that I'm the one who got him into Fish. And I saw him. Like, we had talked. Like, I would talk to him from Israel, and he was in Pennsylvania. He lives in Philadelphia. We knew we were going to see each other at the show, but he's been to so many Fish shows, and he's like and I'm like felt like a noob. Like, again, I forgot what it was, but we were in the car, and he was like, Rosen, get out of the car, I'm tripping. So like it was just like a weird, like, I was like, oh, nice to see you too after like 15 years. Hey, how you doing, man? And like that was like, and this guy's just like wild hair, like total tie-dyed out, and he's a funny guy. He's a really nice guy and smart guy and everything, and but it was just like I can't get that out of my head.
When was this show played?
So today's pair of shows, we'll call them highlights from September 8th and 9th in Albany,
Right.
2000, the year 2000.
Right.
Just to take a look into what the fall 2000 tour was like. I think I've only had one other show discussed
Oh,
on
wow.
attendance bias from this tour, not
Wow,
from
I'd
the
expect so
year
much more.
2000. Yeah, but just from this tour. And I think it was the Darien Lake show that is very well known due to
Right.
its release on Live Fish. But
Right.
overall, let's take a step back and just looking at the fall 2000 tour. So it overall had 22 shows, and it
Right.
began on these two nights. September 8th
Right.
and 9th were the opening nights of the tour. It went up and down the East Coast, then crossed into the Midwest for shows in Ohio and then Illinois, plus
Mm.
Minnesota and Kansas, before going farther west into Colorado, Las Vegas, and closing with 5 shows in California. Not in the
Right.
same city, of course, but up and down the
Right.
state. By 2000, this is my memory of it, things were
Yes.
getting a little bit sketchy, let's
Yes.
say, in the
Right.
lots, and not just
Yes. Oh, for
inside
sure.
the show, right? Not just inside the world, but kind of outside of it,
Right.
because everything was kind of exploding. When Fish released Farmhouse, they put a pretty big full court press, in terms of
Right.
media attention.
Right.
So
Right.
like the shows were getting sold out everywhere, anywhere. We
Right.
were still kind of as a fan base in that post Big Cypress glow, even though it
Right.
got darker around the edges. But the
Right.
mainstream
True.
media took the bait. They were catching on. They had Fish had an hour-long special on VH1. They were on the
Right.
cover of Entertainment Weekly that
Right.
August. And not
I
only on the
remember that.
cover,
Yeah.
but four separate covers, one for each band member. Got to catch
Right.
them all.
Right.
Um,
Was that the
and
weird outfits? They were wearing these like weird.
no, that was Rolling Stone.
Oh, okay. Right. That was the
But
Rolling
this
Stones.
was they
Right.
were each face down in I guess in a fishbowl was the
Oh,
impression, and the
right.
camera was from the bottom of the water
Right.
facing up into their
Right.
faces.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking at. Yeah. I looked at. I was. You can, yeah, because that's the show. That's what they use as the aquarium or whatever that YouTube channel. That's what I've been listening
Ah, I got
to the
it.
show on. So yeah, I know what you're talking about exactly.
And in
Yeah.
that cover article, the writer, Tom Sinclair, he called Fish as he wrote, quote, Fish is literally an Atlantis beneath your nose,
Mm,
some sort of hidden otherworld that's
mm,
nothing like the world you're used to. And he kind of went on, that's the end of the quote. And he kind of went on to say, like, if you just poke around a little bit to find it, Fish is there for you should you want it. And that kind of helped. I don't know if it directly helped, but it kind of, at least in my opinion, encouraged or encapsulated the vibe where not everyone who came was a fan. And of course, there are new fans, but not everyone who came
right.
was there for the show,
Right.
I guess is
Right.
the way I'll put it.
Right.
And
Right.
he went on to describe fans. Again, another quote. They are mostly idealistic, straight out of Scarsdale college kids. He's talking about you and me, with
Right.
their
Right.
tie-dyed glad rags and their aura of
Right.
patchouli-dipped beatitude are such a caricature of hippies that they seem more vivid
Okay.
than their actual prototypes. Yeah, he went a little bit overboard.
Yeah.
But in terms of the band produce, Gordon was getting ready to release Outside Out.
Right.
Trey had just finished his first solo tour. You mentioned, seeing him
Right.
acoustic with his trio in the spring of
Right.
'99. And so things were getting huge. And
Right.
at Darien Lake, a few days after the show, I just remember people being very zoned out and
Yeah.
Shakedown being extremely crowded. Like
Yeah.
my elbows were always touching someone else's elbows or
Right.
ribs.
Right.
I think when most people talk about quote fall 2000, and I want to hear your response to this because I only went to that one show in
Mhm.
Darien Lake, but I think the impression of fall 2000 is that a lot of people think about, the hiatus, right? Because their last show was October 7th, just a
Right.
month after these shows.
Right.
But it should be
Still.
noted that unless you were really attuned to the
Probably.
rumor mill, the hiatus wasn't even announced until 6 shows before it began. It was announced on September 30th, 2000, during
Mhm.
Colonel Forbin's at the
Right.
Thomas and
Yeah.
Mack Center in Vegas, where
I
there was,
remember.
by the
Yeah.
way, their first webcast. Were you able to
Right.
watch that? Did you
Yes.
have a
Yes.
connection?
Yes. Yeah. I was watching it at Adam's house.
Yeah, I was watching it at my now ex-girlfriend's house in this teeny
uh,
tiny little rectangle on a computer screen. And
right.
she's like,
Right.
"What the
Us
hell are you
too.
doing?"
Yeah.
Right?
Us too. Us too.
Yeah.
And it was like
But
buffering like crazy. Yeah. I
so
remember. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you went to 10 shows on
Yes.
that
In
tour or in
2000.
the calendar year 2000?
4 shows in the fall, and 5 shows in the summer. I went to 9/8, 9/9, 9/15 Hershey, and I went to Meriwether 9/17, and then in the summer I went to 6/28, 6/29, which was PNC. Then I went to 6/30, which was in Hartford. I didn't go to the second show in Hartford. I had to come back for some reason, and then it was July 3rd and 4th in Camden again, Camden. But I wanted to just touch upon one thing what you were saying. It's so true. I remember I had these two like metalheads who came up to me and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go to the fish shows because like there's like a lot of drugs. There's gonna be like a lot of drugs there. Like so that's like why we're going." I was like, "You're not going like to see the band at all?" They're like, "No, why would we do that?" I got like exactly what you're saying. There's all sorts of characters that came into the scene that weren't really there necessarily for the band and for the scene and the scene got out of hand and the balloons and everything it got totally out of hand in one hand but in another hand there was like a real pure excitement like for these particular shows one of my good friends, her name is Jen. We went to high school together, and we got into fish kind of together. And she was one part of my fish like crew, like, and she was up in University of New Hampshire, and I was in Pennsylvania, and we were coming from like opposite directions, but to meet at Albany, and she had like a few people, and I had a few people. So all together, we had like 9, 10 people hanging out, and we found a camp, like a camping ground, or she found it like right outside, pretty close to the venue. So for me, it was cool. Like I was enjoying every part of it. We were camping out, we were excited. Everyone was super excited, for the shows. I had never been to Pepsi Arena before, and I thought it was just an incredible place to see fish. But the vibe itself, like in the fall, was really cool. And I think fish was on fire. There was a lot of things going on, like you mentioned, around the edges within the band. We all know the partying going on within the band, like backstage. We all know about like that kind of stuff now. What Trey went through in particular, but as a whole, they sounded great. I mean, these shows they sounded so good. I don't know. For me, from Ghost to Farmhouse, those years were like really incredible years, and they were. I think it was a lot of new ground. The Cal Funk hit in '97, and I saw them in '97 in the Spectrum. It was also an amazing, amazing year, amazing show. Those shows were amazing. Those two Spectrum shows, and I saw them 4 nights and MSG in '98, which was also amazing, amazing shows. And I think this was like the peak. Like in my opinion, this was a peak for fish. If not, I don't know, the peak, a
I don't
peak
know if there
period.
is the peak. I don't know if
The
that
peak,
exists.
right? Yeah, I agree. I agree. You can't say that it's like the peak, because they're always peaking at some way. They're peaking again, but those years, I really like those years. So the excitement was there. It was fans were excited. My crew, we were super excited. I was so like into fish at this point. And then I started collecting CDs. I had like books and books and books of fish CDs, a lot that I would like get from Adam actually and trade with him and other people. Like and I was on like trading lists, and I had so many great, great, great shows.
And we could
Um,
wallow in nostalgia for a bit, right? That's kind of the
yeah,
point of this podcast.
yeah,
I know you said you were in college. The
yeah,
fall of 2000 was my
yeah.
first semester in college. It was the
Oh
first
wow.
time I had the combination of an Ethernet connection and a CD burner in the same place. And
Oh,
this
nice.
was right around the time when hosting websites started popping up where people can
Right,
upload and take their
right,
tapes and turn it into digital media, which was a
right.
new thing at the
New
time,
thing.
you know?
Totally new.
So I
Yeah.
also had to invest heavily in case logic and
Right.
get all those CD books and CDRs and all that stuff. And I would
Right.
just have books and books and books. It was more of a
Right.
collector's mentality. If I had all
Right.
the time in the world, I don't know if I'd be able to listen to all the shows that I
Right.
collected. It was the same before that with my tapes.
I had every show of that tour. So like even if I didn't go to the shows, like I knew the Darien Lake shows. Like the Merriweather was awesome. It was an incredible experience also. But they were so good. They sounded so good. I just think the whole tour was phenomenal. It's like I had to think I think I had every single, CD of that tour, whether they were good soundboards or not. But I needed to hear it. Like it was just at that point I had to hear every single show. And I was very pleasantly surprised by Hershey. But the first two shows, like getting back to the what we're supposed to be talking about here, the first two shows of this tour were phenomenal, and I think the second night they outdid the first night as far as just maybe song placement and just the kind of the level of energy even was even more hyped even than the first night. Although the first night was pretty hyped.
So yeah, I kind of agree with a big part of what you said, where and the kind of personality that each of these two nights have, the September 8th and September 9th, 2000, having listened through them. And for anyone listening to this podcast, normally we cover a show either top to bottom or a specific segment within the show. It would take
Right,
forever to cover two full shows, four sets of
right,
music. So
right,
Brad and I agreed that we would kind of take highlights from each night that would kind of equal the amount of music you might hear in one given show. So the first
right.
segment today will be highlights from September 9th. So they open it with Mellow Mood. And to your point, the crowd is insane. The crowd just goes nuts.
Yeah.
Not only when the lights go down, but when they start playing it. And I was, in a way, well, I don't know if I was surprised to hear how crazy the crowd went, because when the lights go down, that's like the most exciting feeling ever. It's extreme dopamine overload. But
Right.
but when they start playing and singing Mellow Mood, this is the debut of the song. Huge response, and
Right.
it must have set the perfect tone for the night, because I wonder how familiar the crowd was with this song. Spotify did not yet exist, right? Pandora was maybe just getting off its feet, maybe not even. Like it's not like a full on Bob Marley deep cut exactly, but it's also not on his greatest hits. So the energy by the end of this is palpable. Everybody is ready for a tour to begin. And what a an opener, and what a way to set the mood before going into Limb by Limb.
Right, exactly. I mean, you said it perfectly. You really articulated that perfectly. It set the mood. No pun intended, maybe pun intended, but it really set the mood for the night, and it set the mood for the tour too. There was like they felt there was like they felt comfortable. Like you could see that they felt comfortable, and when they feel comfortable, they're on fire. Like that's what I've always gotten out of Fish. Like, is that if they feel comfortable and they're enjoying themselves and you could feel their level of comfort, then the show just flows, and it flows naturally, and it's got energy, and it's surprising, and it's great. It's great. It's got everything, that you want to get out of a Fish show. It's there. And plus they were really on. Like they were particularly on fire at this point in their career, but particularly on this tour, and particularly on these two nights, I thought they were really, really on for the first night. Like usually in the first night, I'm not expecting that much. Maybe at that time I was, but like as the years have gone on, I've expected less, and that maybe doesn't sound like such a, positive, thing to say. But just because of the first night, sometimes there's flubs, sometimes they're not. It's not like a killer, show.
Well, we've seen more by now. Like we know how to keep our expectations in check. We know that they're not infallible. There was in 2000, I was right with you. I thought every show is a masterpiece. Like it had to be. I was there, and it's Fish, so how could it not be? But but now we've kind of mellowed out a bit, and so is the band. The band and the fan base collectively have.
Right.
And after Mellow Mood, they go into Limb by Limb, which it's a really good segue, first of all. And Trey leads off with a fun guitar solo after the song itself kind of ends. And for all of the abstract, spacey jamming that, in my mind, I think of when I think of Fish in 2000, that it's very airy and ambient. This solo and this jam in Limb by Limb sounds very collected with a lot of drive. It sounds like it's going somewhere, not just waiting for something to happen. And Fishman goes crazy. He matches Trey almost note for note, which is incredible to listen to.
They're totally insane. Totally insane.
by
fishing tray.
6 minutes, it's a short version, but by 6 minutes, everyone, I assume in the band, but certainly in the crowd, is ecstatic.
Fire,
The whole,
fire.
yeah, everyone's at full bore, and they move
Yeah,
back to the song by around 7 minutes. So it's like they
yeah,
caught lightning in a bottle.
right, exactly. They compacted so much within that jam, and it was a phenomenal jam. And it was creative. It was out there. It was airy, but yet it was like you said, there was a drive to it. There was a consistency to the jam. They were going after something, like you said, and you could feel it. You could feel it in the jam. You hear it. You hear it in the jam. You hear it. They're kind of bolstered, I think, by the crowd's excitement too. Everyone's vibing off each other. The people from the crowd are picking it up from the band. The band's like getting more into it from the crowd, and they're just amping that energy, but yet staying collected and
Yeah.
staying, you know what I mean? Like it's a very calm and collected set, I think, too, because then the ghost, you know what I mean? Like the ghost is it's calm. They started very calmly and it really builds itself. And it's an incredible ghost. I think it's really an awesome ghost. Especially for first night, for first night of the tour. Like wow, like already Mellow Mood, Limb by Limb, and Ghost. I was like, this is insane. This is great. How could this be already?
Yeah,
How
you're
is this
in for it
possible?
for sure. Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
and for Ghost, and this is really, really when it dawned on me when I was listening, because to your point earlier, a lot of this is audience recordings and
yeah,
not a lot of 2000, at least unless I'm not looking in the right places, not a lot of 2000 is available by soundboard.
right,
And I've said this on the
right,
podcast
right.
a million times, but utilitarian recording technology, like stuff that you could buy at a Best Buy or online and just, or a Sweetwater, or and just walk into a show and record.
Yeah,
Our
yeah.
technology has come so far. It
So
wasn't so
far,
great in 2000. And all
no,
respect to every taper who's ever taped a show. That
including me.
said, I couldn't hear Paige for most of this
Yeah,
show because the
yeah, it's
middle
tough.
is lost. And
Right,
so Trey
correct.
is driving the first half, and then he
Right,
mellows out around 7.5 minutes, where finally Mike and Paige are able to step forward for a little bit.
right,
And it's like crazy rock at 9 minutes, and it's led by Paige on his
right.
organ. And my note says, "This
Yeah.
is the stuff."
Well, the bouncing, and then after the ghost light it up. They're on this kind of zone, but they're like what I meant is like before is like they're keeping it equaled out in the show. Between like kind of ragers or songs that are mellow that become ragers, like Ghost, like Limb by Limb. Even I would even put Saw It Again in there, and the Bowie and the Taste also, but and maybe the Bathtub also. Like they're starting out slow and calm and collected, but then the song after, if you look at it, like a lot of the songs, like Horse into Silent, and then the NICU, the Glide, it's kind of like more of a calm. There's a calmness that's to it. Like I know a lot of people don't like bouncing. I love
I do.
bouncing. Nice. Oh, you
Yeah.
hate bouncing, or you like?
No, I love it. I
Oh,
love it.
good, good, good. Okay, you're on the love side. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. That's good. That's good. No, it's a great song. I mean, it's one of the songs that got me maybe into Fish. Like, I still love that song to this day, and I love the thing that Trey does at the end. How he
Yeah, it's
does
so
the,
much fun. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a great song. And like I said from the beginning, I love Fish's lyrics. I love their song structures, and I love some of the songs as they are. And speaking of which, they go right into Horse in the Silent, which Silent in the Morning is one of my favorite songs. Like I was totally thrown off. I was not expecting, Horse. I was not expecting Horse or Silent. I just wasn't expecting it. So, and you could hear that the crowd also wasn't, because the crowd erupts like
Yeah, enormous cheer. Yeah.
enormous, huge. And I was probably one of the ones like screaming my face off because I was so happy they were playing Silent at that point. It probably was the first time, maybe the only time that I saw Silent in the Morning live, and to me it was always like a song off Rift, it's like
Right. It's an old favorite.
yeah, and I love Paige, and I love when Paige sings, and I love Paige's songs, and I love each one of them, in the band individually for their own specific reasons. But at this point, it was perfect. It just was perfect. The bouncing the horse into Silent, it just everything was great. It brought it down a little bit, the energy level, but not like low where like I don't know, like a Shade or something where you're just like, okay, what's gonna be like? Okay, and I'm not like dissing on Shade either because I actually do like the song. I like Shade actually.
Right, but that's part of the flow of a set. You
Yeah,
need to have the low points to match the high points.
right,
And
right.
after Horse and Silent in the Morning, which again we said gets an enormous cheer, they
Huge.
played Saw It Again in NICU, and then they played Glide. And I
Right.
am the biggest fan of Glide. It's my
Me
favorite
too.
song. It's the
Me
song
too.
that hooked me.
Me
I
too.
am
It's one of my
any
favorites.
show
Yeah.
that features Glide is automatically a
A
capital
plus.
G, capital S, great show in
Right.
my eyes.
Right.
And then,
Right. Totally surprised by the Glide and so
right.
happy with it. I love that song.
But anyway, this Glide,
Okay.
though, I was surprised because I
Yeah.
thought that Trey was not up to the task of the guitar
Uh,
part. Did you hear that in the moment?
um, I didn't hear that in the moment, and I didn't really catch that either on listening back. Maybe it's just a recording. I don't know. I thought that they nailed it with the vocals. I mean, it sounded good. I mean, it sounded like it was Glide. I mean, I didn't hear that he messed up the guitar part. Did you caught? Did you he flubbed
Yeah,
it or
in fact, my note, and I'm sorry if this is, pissing in your
bring it
Cheerios a
down?
little bit, but I am going to say,
Hey, they're
I,
humans.
I, I looked it up and I wrote it was played 3 times in 2000, and I hope the other
Uh,
two were better than this.
okay, okay, right. Well, that's cool. At least they played it 3 times in 2000.
Right,
I don't know
right.
when the
That's more
last
than they
time
played
they
otherwise. Glide is a
right
rarity.
when was the last time they played Glide? I mean, I don't
That'll
even
be for the
know.
fact check. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
play Axela after Glide, and then our
Right,
last our last highlight for set one that we discussed is Taste,
right.
and crowd favorite, very
Yeah,
nimble piano solo. I always took note when I could hear
uh,
Paige in this
right,
recording because it's so rare.
right. You're right. Page is very, very low in the recording, and it's not evened out. So you have to like stretch your ears, like to hear, like, is that what Page is doing there? Like, okay, like now, like you said, we kind of maybe take things for granted, or I do, because I like, like everything is a soundboard, everything is like, you perfect quality, everyone is you sounds perfect, like now with these recordings, like I'm like laughing about it because like I went back and I listened and I was like also like, oh my God, I think I even wrote to you like this is a horrendous like recording. But like the more I listened to it, I was like, okay, it's an audience recording. What are you gonna do about it?
Right,
Like
it's free.
it's free, right? Exactly. We could at least live the memories a little bit in our minds going back. But you could I got a good idea. I mean, I listened to these shows a bunch of times since we decided on that these were gonna be the shows. So
Yeah, and
um
I'm glad you picked them because this Taste, which doesn't quite close the set, after Taste, they play
yeah.
Character Zero, which, oh
Golgi.
no, I'm sorry, Golgi. Yeah, you're right. I'm
Yeah,
looking at the wrong set.
yeah,
They close with Golgi, but
yeah.
Taste, toward the end of it, I wrote about 8.5 minutes, big big level energy that leads to some minor key jamming for just a few seconds, and they turn back to the usual ending of Taste with, I wrote, extra pieces of flair.
Right. Yeah. It was an energetic Taste. I could hear Page a little bit, I think, on the audience recording. He sounded great, as you know, as Page always sounds. And it was great. I mean, it was again, the song selection was interesting. There was an interesting pick of songs. I would have picked every single one of those songs to hear. Like, it's not like maybe the Big Yam or the Divided Sky, or I mean, I love so many different songs. Like you said, like Glide. I love Glide. I'm so happy that I heard that Glide, and it was really nicely picked. I think again, for the first show, for the first set, they're still just like putting their feet into this tour. Things seem to like really glide really well, you know, like.
Yeah, and the second set opens with Birds of a Feather, which was really good. It's still, you know, it is almost immediately a hit. I remember when it debuted at the Island Tour, and it's like, everyone was like, oh, this is a good one. Like, everyone knew there was no waffling on Birds of a Feather like there is with usual new songs. It gets a little bit Type 2. It doesn't quite go. I wrote it's flirting with Bliss jamming and Type 2.
Well,
you know,
yeah. Right.
And then it goes a few songs later, Wind or a Bug, which is a debut. Yeah, everyone loved that one.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they debuted with two like reggae songs. You know, so setting like a reggae-ish, like chilled, relaxed vibe. And just when you think you're getting that relaxed vibe, boom, Bowie comes in. You know, it's like, okay, it's not the exact relaxed vibe that can take you through the whole set. But that's what I liked about it. There was peaks, there was valleys, there was energy, there was calmness, and it was all like together and all flowed. But the Windora Bug was great. I was so happy to hear that. I knew the Windora Bug from Trey's band, so it was like a really pleasant surprise. It was also like I was surprised by that, but I was like, wow, like they went from a kind of a raging Birds into a really chilled out reggae Windora Bug.
And after Bowie, they played the Rarity, the blues classic, back at the Chicken Shack before a very interesting, and I don't like to use that word interesting. I think it could mean anything. I work with middle schoolers, and they think everything is interesting when they can't think of another more specific adjective.
So ambiguous.
Yeah, it is. But this is an interesting bathtub gin, the jam after, because it's listed as bathtub gin into jam, standalone jam. Yeah, which is always a good sign. Before they close with Character Zero. But Bathtub Gin, let's sit on this for a bit. Like, it's very serene, to your point, and it's very enjoyable. Type 1 jam.
Yeah.
It's not particularly explorative like the original gin jam. They're kind of like riding the wave. And then and then I like this guitar riff. It pops up at about 10 minutes or 10 and a half minutes. It's creative. It's fun. But for some reason, when I was listening, I just couldn't think that the band was on the same wavelength. It was like nothing suggests at this point, 10 minutes in, that this gin is going to blow any minds. It's very patient, but maybe a little too patient, I thought, from my perspective, having not been there. And then this jam begins with this feedback.
Yeah.
Like they do the Bathtub Gin closing melody and you think, oh, all right, good, serviceable gin. And then Fishman is playing this very simple melody on the cymbals. I think Page is playing the sort of like 70s xylophone kind of keyboard. It's very ambient, very airy.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like it could go into 2001 at any second. And then
Right.
all of a sudden, Fishman's on vacuum, and it sounds
Right.
super duper weird. I loved it. The jam charts, Fish.net jam charts, describes it thusly, quote, an ambient jam developed by a segue on the back of Bathtub Gin. It includes Fish
Yeah.
on the vacuum and Trey on drums, and then
Sure.
it segues into Zero. But there's so much more to it than that.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you really described it like you hit it on the nose there. It was very calm. They were kind of just riding on that wave. I didn't hear anything too explorative. They weren't getting too out there like sometimes now you'll hear, Bathtub like, when they play Bathtub now, it's like it's totally on a different, level of layers and exploring, between type 1, type 2, minor, major, getting and like they go everywhere sometimes and bathtub now, when they choose to. But I mean, that it was a nice bathtub. I was happy. I love bathtub, but this was cool. It did its job, like you said, serviceable. And then it got super like weird, like what's going on here? Like, wait, they didn't finish bathtub, but they're just like dragging it something. They're going into some ambient space, and then Trey gets on drums, and then I knew that Fishman was coming out on on vacuum, but it was weird like because that was like not a normal thing to happen with bathtub and at the end of bathtub, and for Fishman to come out on vacuum at that point in that kind of ambient space, it just was like it just added on to the vibe of the show of being, I'm not going to use the word interesting, but of being a kind of show that takes you into different places and you don't know really where it's going to go, but everything's still kind of melted together very beautifully, and including this jam out of bathtub, and it made bathtub even more interesting that I went back and listened to it. That if you listen to the whole thing together, it's like it's cool. It's definitely a different kind of bathtub, and it gets really different there. And then they bring it home with character Zero.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode. So yeah, that first night, there was a little bit more to it than we have the time to discuss. But after that incredible bathtub gin, and you said they closed with character Zero, the encore is fire, which is always great to hear. And I got the sense that the first night, if you're playing a 2-night run, or you're attending a 2-night run, right? And Fish is not yet on this podcast, but if you're attending a 2-night run, it usually, in my mind, turns into the fun night and the serious jammy night. The first
Right,
night, in my view, of this pair of shows that you chose, the first night was definitely the fun night. And
right,
this night, the second, and we're talking about Saturday, September 9th, 2000
mm,
now.
right.
This is the holy shit. What did I just see?
Blew my
Wow.
mind. Yeah,
So the
yeah.
show
Correct,
opens
correct, correct. Yeah,
with Possum,
yeah,
my friend, into a ridiculous jam, and
yeah,
then Gumbo. Like,
yeah.
what a serious tone setter.
Oh yeah, 100%. All those, I loved every part of that. Those opening songs. Possum was on fire. My friend was totally unexpected because at that time they weren't. Now they're playing my friend a lot, which I
Yeah,
find very
totally.
interesting. Yeah, which I find interesting, and they've also made it into like a real jam vehicle too. Where at that point it wasn't. It was unexpected. It was like, whoa, my friend, like that's kind of bringing like this old school kind of vibe to it. But
It's
like
like you
setting
said
like
with Silent, with Horse into Silent. Oh, this is a song from Rift. It
right,
has that vibe to it at the
right,
time in 2000.
right, exactly. It was like, oh yeah, that's an older, that's like a riff song, and whoa, I'm getting this live now. Like it was like it was very surprising. It was very surprising that they broke that out, and then yet alone this jam, which was like that was also very surprising too because I figured okay they're gonna play like a very compact like my friend and then whatever will be next but they're getting that in because there's like Possum which is like very energetic but it could get a little dark too and then my friend is also bringing the dark vibe and they're still going with that kind of thick dark funky my friend I wouldn't say is like funky but it has like a darker feeling you
Which is
know
kind of what 2000 was like in the lot also. Like, it was
right
funky, it was fun, but there was a little
right
bit of darkness around.
right exactly very well put and then the gumbo was like oh for me I love gumbo was one of my favorite songs like you say gs for glide I say gs for gumbo because yeah if they play gumbo then I'm like the whole show is like mine like they've done a million things right just by playing gumbo and it was phenomenal it was a great gumbo I don't remember it being too out there or too exploratory but it was good it was good and it was going everything was good it was everything was perfect and it was more energy than the previous night and it was even flowing even better I think than the previous night everything was just going perfectly into each other like every song was perfect on both the nights to me that's how amazing this tour and they were at that time there wasn't even like oh maybe they shouldn't have played that I mean like no this set was like like from the sky from God it just was like meant to be every part was meant to be the whole band sounded great really and when
I
you're in
mentioned
there
Mike also. I mentioned Mike in my notes that there's parts during Gumbo. I wrote at 7.5 minutes, I can finally hear Mike lead the band. Like, there's enough space for him because they're
yeah
playing so funky for him to cut through the
yeah
fuzz of the recording. And then at
right
the end, you mentioned segues, how wonderful they kind of just gelled into one another.
yeah
Fabulous delay effect at the end of Gumbo to
right
create the segue that goes right into Maze. And to
right
me, this was the highlight of the set, or at least of the highlights that we listened to. I know it's
yeah
early in the set, but this Maze is, when they start Maze now in 2025, And I always hope, oh man, I hope this one does it. And I don't necessarily know what that means. I don't know if I could put into words what it is in that case.
Yeah.
But this version of Maze, I was driving home yesterday listening to it, and it was like I couldn't remember the last 9 minutes of driving. Like I was totally in another
You were
world.
lost in the maze.
Yeah, I was lost in
Yeah.
the maze.
You'll never get out of that maze.
Yeah, someone had to say it. But
Yeah.
the tension and
Yeah.
release jazz chords started about
Yeah.
5 minutes, and it drives the crowd wild. There's
Yeah.
just I don't use the phrase hose very often, well known
Yeah.
as it is, but
Yeah.
at 7 minutes, this is pure hose. Like
Yeah.
it's huge
Yeah.
shift. And then
Yeah.
my last notes here in capital letters at 8 minutes and 40 seconds. This is what does it.
Right. And Paige, I mean,
Yeah,
Paige,
it's Hall Page.
all Page, and Paige is raging. And, Paige is totally raging. Trey gives him that space. That's what I meant. Like that, they were in a zone where they were really I almost like I feel like it's how they are right now too. They're really listening to each other and giving each other space. And Trey laying off when he should be laying off, and giving Paige that space that's so perfect in the maze. And the maze was a rager. I mean, the whole set up to this point is just like it was really awesome. I mean, really really awesome playing, on fire, energetic. Crowd is amped. It could be even more amped than the previous night, which I couldn't believe it even. The energy in the place was like, when is this thing going to cool down a little bit? I mean, but not wanting it to, like, because I was like, what? I was like 20 years old. Like, I had so much energy myself that I remember think I was on the floor for both nights, but definitely on the second night, I think I was on the floor. And I remember just the energy was just phenomenal. Everybody's dancing. Everyone's in a great mood. Everyone's loving every second of it and really into it and really, really honed in on the band because they were really honed in on each other, but they were really tight. An enormous amount of energy. I can't even stress that, like coming from the band too, which was then that led into the Boogie On.
Right. And a big part of that, the way that the energy never dissipated was because they're on point segues, right? We just talked about the way they went from Gumbo into Maze. Boogie On is like an immediate transition. It's not a segue where they don't stop playing at all. They stop playing for like half a millisecond. And then Boogie On just starts on its usual beginning. But it's after some solid jamming. My favorite part, and I imagine it might have been your favorite part, is that the whole bottom drops out. And this is the first time I've heard them do this with this song, ironically, is they actually start playing a reggae beat.
Yeah, it actually is reggae, believe it or not.
Right?
Boogie on reggae. No, you're right. Everything you said was that's right, and it added to the tension and release of tension that you were talking about. That they were so like mastering at that point, both in between each song, but within the songs itself. And again, they went from this whole dark kind of thing from Possum all the way up to Gumbo, and then and up to Maze. Sorry, up to Maze even, and then Boogie on is so happy. It's so and they were playing it fast at that time too. It was fast. It was like almost like a ska, almost a little bit too. Like it was fast. Like and then they caught the reggae vibe of that song. So they kept on that going a little bit, but it just was making everything like they're putting like an all inclusive set. Like it's like everything that you could possibly want out of a set was in this set. You know what I mean? Like you could get lost in the set. Like and just there's so much that's inside of the set. So it was great. The boogie on was great. I saw everyone boogieing on. Everyone was boogieing. Everyone was dancing their asses off. Everyone was so happy to hear that boogie on. Like it was like enormous, huge cheer from the crowd. Like huge. That's exactly what you should be playing right now. Exactly. I wish they would play it more sometimes.
And they played Rogue, Gaiute, and they closed with a really good Run Like an Antelope, which featured Tom Marshall coming out and saying the lyrics,
yeah,
the Rai
that
Rai
was a
Rocco.
treat.
So that's a
Yeah.
huge treat.
It was a treat. It was good to see Tom up there, and it was nice because it's had this still like the small venue kind of vibe. Tom lives where in Princeton, so he's not. It's not too much of a long trip for him, But it was cool. It was cool to get that, for Tom to come out. It was cool. It was good. I really liked it. It was something that just made me feel really happy inside. And also the Rogue and Gaiuti were great too, and I thought played like really to perfection. I love Rogue. I think one of the most underrated Fish songs, lyrically and musically, and just getting that really slowed down, grooved out vibe, changed it up a little bit, but only enough to then. It was interesting to go into the Gaiuti. I thought that was an interesting choice, and I was really happy with it too. And then staying with like animal like vibe, going from Gaiuti the pig into antelope.
Right. I didn't even make that connection. Good
Yeah,
point.
me neither. Me neither. So now I'm just looking. I'm like, wait, that's about an animal. No, but it was, and I love antelope. I mean, I saw antelope a bunch of times. Great way to close the set. Whole first set was amazing. What's going to go on for a second set? Like what could they possibly even do
Well,
to top that?
the second set, I think does top it. In if I may be
Mm,
so bold, they
mm.
open with
Please be bold.
so they open with "Gotta Jabu," and then for set list purposes, they play "The Curtain," which I hold in very high regard and
Me too.
have forever
Me
ever
too.
since
Me
I
too.
first heard it. So
I
for
love
me,
this
if they
song.
play "The
Yeah.
Curtain," that's like how I said "Glide" makes it greatest show. "The Curtain" kind of
Curtain.
elevates it to special show somehow.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
real meat
Agreed.
is in
Agreed.
Sand. The real
Yeah.
meat is the third song in
Yeah.
Sand,
Yes.
which
Yes.
it starts a little confused. It sounds like half the
Yeah.
band, like Mike and Fish, thought that they were about to play First Tube, but they
Right.
don't. But Trey is playing Sand, and then after it's only like 7 seconds. It's a really
Right.
short mix up, but it's
Right.
very
I caught that.
noticeable. And
Yeah, I
then
caught that. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
settle in pretty quick. And
Yeah.
wow, you want to talk about a jammed out Sand like this
Yeah.
digital delay loop? It sounds to
Yeah.
me a bit like a lot of 1999 versions with a lot of guitar
Yeah.
effects just
Yeah.
looping and looping. The
Looping.
crowd
Yeah.
is going nuts. Page is adding keyboard effects, and I don't know. Mike and Fishman just keep the beat rock steady this whole time. I
So
can't
steady.
believe it.
So steady that it comes to a point that it's so steady that the crowd is feeling that steadiness. And then out of like rote or out of like they're like robots, the crowd just starts like clapping like to
Yeah,
the beat of Sand in sync. That doesn't like really happen that much. Like that you hear the whole arena like clapping like to the beat of Sand because the Sand is so like you said perfectly. It's like they it's such a steady groove on that Sand like now like here sometimes Mike will like differ it up like with his bass line and he'll add the do like he'll add like something like different like he'll put in there like just to keep it kind of interesting now. And at that point it was just this flat steady groove, but like you said there was layers that were going in and Trey's looping and Paige is doing his thing, and it's all kind of adding up to this big like erupting like sand, but at the same time, it just stays on this like grooved out, steady groove that Mike and Fish are just laying it down and holding it down, and the crowd is like immersed in that.
Twice they clap along, not just once.
Right,
It happens in the middle and then again toward the end. But toward the end, Michael Ray, our trumpet player, comes on, which is I thought, right, attendance bias aside, actually, I thought just as a listener, right, 25 years after the show was played, as a listener, I thought this is kind of an odd spot for a guest, especially on horns. But he does add. It doesn't take long before he adds this cool, jazzy, weird layer to the jam.
Right.
Then,
right.
And then, I don't know if you caught this, at 19 and a half minutes, Michael Ray plays the riff for First Tube.
I caught that, yeah.
Right? Maybe there was a miscommunication.
Yeah, right. That I literally listened to that like before we started talking, and I was like, wait, he just played First Tube, like, and I knew, and I think I was remember at the show going back. You say about just listening to the show, it could kick in these memories too. I remember thinking like, wait, he just played the line for First Tube. And thinking what you just said, like, was there some miscommunication? Did they think they were gonna play like First Tube and they went into sand, or like what happened? Like something happened there. Like, I mean, he was more for like a vibey effect. Like,
totally.
Like it was a weird place to bring out a guest. It was very interesting to bring out Michael Ray. And he's a more of an avant-garde-ish. I mean, he could get funky, and some of his lines were funky, but it's not like Grippo or like or like the Giant Country Horn. I don't know. It's a different, more ambient kind of thing that he's doing, and then he's doing this whole dancing thing. And I was watching the video, and I was like, whoa, did he really do all that like stuff? Like it was like, and I think Trey gets on keyboard at some point during the sand too, and he's like,
yeah, sure sounds like it.
Yeah, he does. He gets on keys, and there's this really steady groove, and he's just kind of enjoying Michael Ray's like pretty close to him, and he's laughing a little bit at Michael Ray's whole thing, and his whole shtick of thing, what he's doing. I don't know, with his whole like he's got he's got the costume, and then like towards and like in Hood he brings people on stage, which was also like bizarre. Like it got like weird, like it got weird and kind of like okay, I shouldn't use the word interesting, but it got weird and like pulling me into the show a little bit. Like, okay, this is cool.
Well, it's unusual too.
Usual, yeah. That's the word I think I was looking for. It's very unusual. It was
Yeah,
very
so
unusual. Yeah,
after that Mammoth Sand, they play Maki Super Policeman. So again,
yeah,
back into that reggae vibe
yeah.
from night
Right,
one. And
right,
Cars, Trucks, and Buses and Funky Bitch, which are songs that I think would be a little bit more usual, right? Traditional for a horn player. Cars, Trucks,
right.
Buses, especially.
Especially
And
right.
Funky Bitch, which is the song, if I tried to look up this stat. I couldn't quite find how to do it. I'll have to get in touch with Zizix and see if I could do it. For all the guest stars that Fish has ever had from, let's say, 1990 forward, I
Yeah,
think they play Funky Bitch most often, more than any other
yeah,
song.
yeah. I know John Popper's he's been on Funky Bench a bunch of times. Derek Trucks,
Their
I
Trucks
think.
is who I was
Yeah,
thinking too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He played. I think there was a Possum Funky Bitch encore that they played. Derek Trucks came out in '99, I think it was at some
Yep.
point. But yeah, you're right. I think Funky Bitch is like the guest. That's like the guest spot, which makes sense. It's like a blues. It's a blues. It's a basic blues. Tune. It's a jammed out tune. It makes sense. It makes sense that the guest would come up on Funky Bitch, and it was a smoking Funky Bitch, and
Yeah.
I just like listening back to it. Then maybe I was more into it because I was there, but I'm not 100,000% crazy about Michael Ray's like role in this whole jamming thing. Like, I maybe would have even preferred not for him to be in the mix. Like I'm just being honest. Like if John Popper would have came out, I probably would have been like super into it. Because and he rocks out on Funky Bitch. And but whatever. I think you're right. What you said about cars, trucks, buses, and it's a Funky Bitch. Like if there was going to be like a point where you put a horn there, so that would make sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been interesting if they would bring out like Branford Marsalis, like that would
Oh,
have made
don't
it.
play with me.
That would have been really interesting because it's the Nick, it's the Dead's kind of turf a little bit, and I just thought of that right now. Like that would have been interesting because he's very smooth and funky and everything. And I think and not again, not dissing on Michael Ray too much, but I just didn't feel the funk. Like I didn't feel that he was totally connected with what was going on.
I
And
agree for what it's worth. I got your back on this.
okay, cool, yeah, because and so it left me like a little bit like wanting more or something. I don't know like what the word is, or not exactly wanting that, but I was still really happy, because the vibe was great and the songs, the songs that they picked were great. Cavern was great. I was so happy, But every song I would have loved to hear. Like you said, Curtain is an amazing, amazing, amazing Fish song, and it's so intricate and it's just beautiful and everything, even the vocals, how everything. I just love that song. It's definitely a song that I love. So the whole tour, it was a great tour. It was a great time to be into Fish. It was a good year. It was just a good year for them. Farmhouse was. I mean, I'm a fan of their albums too. I thought Farmhouse is a terrific album, but at the same time, still exploring and being in a really creative time, I think, for them, and a really solid time period. Okay, there was a lot of things going on with the band. Again, like I said it in the beginning, like we weren't, as fans, we didn't really know that much. We could feel it, we could see it, maybe we could sense some things were happening with Trey, maybe, but I think as a whole that they put a pretty good front, like and I think that they were just still young enough where they were having a really good time, and enjoying themselves, and sort of a different level that they got to as a band at that point. I mean, these were incredible shows. Great way to start off the fall tour, and really happy that I was at those shows, and happy that I could talk to you about it.
Yeah, Brad, thank you so much for taking the time, for
My
making the
pleasure.
time all the way cross continental, even,
Right,
coming to me
right,
from Israel. So thank
right.
you again so much for
Thanks,
taking
Brian.
the time and getting so in depth about what it was like to be at these two shows, September 8th and 9th in Albany in the year 2000 at the Nick. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your patience. for hearing me out, and thank you for your work that you do on these shows. It really is a blessing to fish fans and to the fish community that you're you're putting this into a chronology. You're archiving this, and you're putting this into the history of fish, which is the best band of all time. So, and my favorite band of all time. So, and it really is a pleasure to talk to you, and you have a great insight into the band and great knowledge of the band. So it's was really a pleasure. It was a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you so much.
And that's it for today's conversation with Brad Rosen. It's been 25 years, so let's make sure we got everything right.
Attendance bias fact check.
The Pepsi Arena, as it was known at the time of these Albany shows, is now the MVP Arena at the time of this recording. It opened in 1990 as the Knickerbocker Arena, colloquially known as the Knick, and it has also been known as the Times Union Center. For concerts, it has a capacity of 15,357 people. Also, at the time of this recording, the Grateful Dead has played the arena 13 times, and Phish has played there 16 times. Brad's most recent run was in Camden in 2018. He couldn't remember if it was a 2-night or a 3-night run. It was a 2-night run. Occasionally, throughout today's conversation, you may have heard Brad's small dog barking or yipping in the background. That is Brad's dog Joy adding her piece to the episode. During our conversation about Silent in the Morning, Brad said that he loves Page and that he loves Page songs. Just to be clear, I think we all love Page. I don't know if Brad meant to imply that Silent in the Morning was written by Page or just sung by him, but it is a Marshall Anastasio composition. At the time of this recording, Phish last played Glide on August 31st, 2021 at the Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View, California. And finally, the Derek Trucks sit-in that Brad referred to toward the end of our conversation was on July 7th, 1999 at the Blockbuster Pavilion in Charlotte, North Carolina. Derek joined the band on slide guitar for the encore of Possum and, yes, Funky Bitch. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Brad for joining me today, Phish.net for their help with the fact check, the Mockingbird Foundation for everything they do for furthering music education, and Phish.in for the recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show. You could leave a rating and a review of it on your favorite podcast app. You could also go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate anything you can. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.